This is the exciting part. So what are you allowed to talk about in your new chapter with what you're doing now?
Well, a lot of stuff.
Let's hear it.
Yeah.
What are you doing now?
So Chief Operating Officer of CleanArc Data Centers.
Who's that? What
CleanArc is, we're going to change the face of data center power.
Ooh.
Yes.
All right. So how?
So how do the hyperscalers get their green energy right now?
Well, they're just buying it off a rate table, I'm guessing.
Yeah, they just, they sign PPAs for hundreds of megawatts, hundreds. But what have they said in their, we're going to be totally carbon neutral or carbon positive by 2030, that they're going to make that power load follow. They're going to make that power 24/7. When you buy power, just straight PPA power, you're buying either that wind at night in great generalization or that solar during the day. Mm-hmm. That's not 24/7. So you're putting a lot of things together to try to achieve
what you want to
achieve.
Because I always viewed it as like this table could be a pool, and this could be this glass full of water could be solar,
right?
And I'm pouring it into the pool, and then this is the wind energy, and I'm pouring that in the pool, and then later on, whatever capacity I put in there, I could pull that amount out of whatever this. Right. So how does that system work? Explain it for the cavemen like me.
No, I mean you've pretty much got it. So it's
you're limited on what you could pull out of that, but you have no idea what that power really is.
Right. It's on the same transmission system. There's several of those across the country. So you're adding green power to the grid, which is good. That displaces some less clean power. But at the end of the day, it's a paper transaction, and if you really want to match. You want to match 100 megawatts of data center power 24/7, you've got to, buy 300 megawatts of renewables. It's just about 3 to 1.
So how does that pencil?
I'm sure it's extremely expensive to do it that way.
But when I say this, it's being mandated now at this level. You're seeing this as groups that the 5 or 6 groups that make 80% of the purchasing decisions in the space are now saying we won't go to an operator unless they have this accounted for.
I think that's increasingly becoming part of their calculation.
I agree.
And these are different, they're different teams within those companies right now. One is like, hey, we need some data center space, and then one's like, hey, we need it to be powered by green energy. And we're going to help bring those two groups together by offering them not only here's a scalable campus where you can put up to 500 megawatts of your space if you really need that much, space and power, and we can also give you your green electrons. Here's a structured product that meets.
How does that model work? So how do you do that? How do you guarantee that you could provide that for them?
We have an energy team that is putting this together. We've brought lots of quantitative analysis. We've got Bill Thomas as our SVP of energy, comes from ton of renewables development background, origination, trading. So there's a lot.
Was he at Enron?
He was not. He was not at Enron.
I say that I did a podcast that's coming out a little bit, and it was with the CEO of Enchanted Rock, and they're doing all natural gas engines.
Yeah,
and he came from Enron. He's like, I was there before all that went down. I was joking, but I mean, so this seems like a pretty exciting thing. What was the genesis behind this, and how did? So tell everybody that doesn't know who your company is, like. They may know who your CEO is.
Yeah.
So
Jim Trout, certainly well known in the industry. Definitely one of the reasons that I decided to take this opportunity. Jim's done this a couple times.
So he was what, GI Partners, and then he was Digital, and then he was Vantage, right?
Yes, Vantage CoreSite.
Both he was CoreSite too, huh?
Vantage and CoreSite. So
I did not know that.
Yeah, so he's already put 2 companies together, helped put Digital on the map. He worked at Prologis before that. So he's a big name. He's got a great background. And he's a great person to learn from, but
wildly smart. I've only met him a few times. I doubt he would remember me, but I had him come speak at an event once when I was at HP. He did. He was. I mean, look, he's a very unassuming, smart person.
Very. And I can't tell you how much I'm learning just by osmosis, just being.
How did you guys find each other?
So CleanArc is backed by Quantum Energy Partners, which is a big energy investment fund based in Houston. They've got, I think, $20 billion under management. They've got an arm that invests just in green energy. called 547 Energy. And so 547 has some subsidiary companies, ConnectGen, that develops utility scale wind and solar. They've got Blue Float, which is offshore. They've got some other investments in various companies in that side of the space, in the energy generation space. And they were like, hey, we see this data center opportunity. We see that these big tech companies are buying all of this green power. Like, can we put something together here? And so they tapped Jim to put that together.
Thesis,
and then they tapped Jim to build a team around it. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And who else is on that team? Anybody else I would know? Or
I think so. John Day just came on board as our chief
which
commercial
John
officer.
Day? There's a couple.
He was with Sabi most recently. And
yeah.
QTS before that. Yeah.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
I know John Day.
Yeah.
He's your chief revenue officer?
He's our chief commercial officer.
Good hire.
Yeah.
He's an artist. You know what I'm saying? He really loves the art of sale.
Yeah.
He's good.
So I'm really looking forward to working with him. And then we've got some younger guys in the space. I mean, that's not the right word, but couple guys out of Cisco and digital. I say that I have no concept for whether people are older than me, younger than me, peers, whatever. But
they're fine. No one cares.
They're so Mark Horacan is our director of engineering. Chris Ortel is director of program management. A guy named John Cordisco, former Marine.
Where's the headquarters? Denver.
We are headquartered in Las Vegas.
Oh, that's right. I think I knew that. What was the genesis behind that? Is that where Jim lives?
That's where Jim lives. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
How that sounded cool though. I mean, I guess there has to be some advantages when you guys have to entertain clients at your headquarters.
We've got a great new office space. We just moved up a floor in our building, and so we've now got a conference room and an office. So we are very much looking forward to entertaining customers.
Good for you.
Yeah.
So what has it been like now that you started with them, and you mean you're doing what? What is your primary focus right now?
So as an early stage company, there's a lot of pieces we've got to put together. Jim is obviously the head of strategy. He's got the vision, and I'm sort of the execution for a lot of that. I like to think of my job as COO as I'm a solution finder. So what do we need to accomplish? How are we going to accomplish that? Let's fit these pieces together. Okay, that worked. Okay, let's fit these pieces together. Let's put these different ways of doing things in a room together and see what where we come out of it. So that is the big part of my job. But that flows through everything from HR processes to how do we actually manage our development process? How do we actually put together our ESG strategy? So
sure,
a lot of moving parts there.
What was the thing that excited you the most to go there? Was it like what they were doing as a business in terms from the energy and?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it was
that's
a couple of things, with the background in renewables and the background in data centers, I'm the person on the team that brings both of those experiences to the table, but the chance to start something completely fresh,
sure, and
build it and be innovative and be a game changer and be disruptive in a very good way. It's tremendously exciting.
You have to really enjoy failing too, right? I mean that, it's such a humbling thing when you are the first one through the walls, the bloodiest. Mm-hmm. Your group is trying to admire what they're trying to do. They're trying to be disruptive to the industry and in many ways in the long term change the market, But to tie back to that is the goal to eventually be to the point where 100% of the power that you have for your data centers, regardless of where they're going to be, will be 100% green. And that's right out of the gate? Or was that be something like, by 2057, we're going to be there?
No, it is
day one, minute one?
Day one.
So it's all a function of negotiating those PPAs.
Yeah.
And is that, you're the quarterback on that type of thing?
No, that's Bill's leading that charge.
Okay.
But it's going to be really exciting to see all of that come together. And that's,
Is anybody else playing along that level of commitment that you're getting to right now with green energy?
Everybody's trying to figure it out. I think we're going to be the first ones to put it together the way we're doing it on the scale that we're going to do it. But, again, it's kind of table stakes. You've got to have a way
What's the risk? Is it that because of that guarantee as a good steward for sustainability and renewal, it means that there will be additional OpEx costs or arbitrarily? So is it because it may be more expensive too a little bit, but at least it's 100% green? Is that the risk?
I mean, there's a few risks. And I think one of the ways that we're unique, we're only targeting hyperscale.
Okay.
Or
wholesale.
Say it in a different way. We're targeting people who are going to buy half or one half or one whole or multiple of our buildings.
So you only have 2 clients in a building at the most.
At the most, yeah.
Which is a different business model.
It's a different business model. So when you think about how a co-location data center builds, ramps up its power, can you as the operator walk in day one with, fronting a PPA for all of that power that you don't know exactly when it's going to get used? Because
if you miss it, the clawbacks would be your rate table would get flipped on its head.
You're going to be paying that power bill. You're not going to be able to pass it through.
Yeah, exactly right.
So it can be, I'm not saying it can't be done, but it can be challenging to match like that. You can certainly buy megawatts to match and offset the number of megawatts you're using.
You kind of got to get a customer to guarantee what their ramp load is going to look like.
You want a customer to match their usage to the energy that you're bringing in.
Got you. So you have to collaborate with that client to make sure that you're not overcommitting.
Right.
And then at the same time, you're sharing that risk with that enterprise end user, and they're gaining the benefit of saying, hey, we're doing the right thing here, and this is what we're doing, right? So how well has that narrative been received?
I think it's, we're communicating it now. So we're getting that conversation out to the market. Bill's been speaking at some of the renewables, and energy conferences. I've been talking about it at some of the data center events. So we're getting it out there. We're getting it, now we've got John on board to really continue to evangelize that with the customers and talk about how, great it's going to be to be able to do this. He's a good guy to do it. Yeah. So the message is getting out there. We're a young company. I mean, we just had our press release in January and it's only April. I know it seems like it should be December, but it's only April. So it's been 4 months.
No, I think that there's a few different schools of approach and how people do it. They try to stay in stealth mode until they've arrived at something of significance, and they announce, "Hey, by the way, everyone kind of knows," because NDAs are extremely important in this space. But what I found is contractors horse trade on that type of data as much as they can, and regardless of how hard you'll try, there will be an element of things that they simply just find a way of getting out of the bottle, right? Yeah. And to that end, controlling that narrative, what you're doing, I think that's what you're doing right now with your roadshow and your campaigns and going and speaking all these things. I think also allowing people to understand what the market is driving, right? Because you're not arbitrarily just doing this. It's Field of Dreams. We're going to build it and they'll come. There's pent demand for this.
There is so much demand. I don't know how much you heard of some of the other panels yesterday as well, but some of the predictions on our panel were there will be no available space. All of the available space is going to get leased in the next few years.
In the NFL markets, or is that? We're already
everywhere,
seeing that, right?
Everywhere.
It's going to be about, what do you think the number one driver is? Is it space? Is it power? Is it supply chain? Is it?
I think there's just so much shift. There's been so much shift in what the drivers are on the customer side.
I agree.
At first they all needed, more and more power and space, just bigger buildings, bigger campuses. Now they need spaces that are closer to their end users that are, right on the edge that can deal with, algorithms and smart homes and self-driving cars and all these little pieces in between. And then there's got to be somewhere to store all the stuff that's created. So the demand isn't going to go away. It's not even going to go down.
Oh, no chance.
No, there's no chance.
I will say though, demand will go down, but I think that the way that they make purchasing decisions will certainly change. The pendulum shifts.
It will. And so one of the other things that was talked about was, now if you're a publicly traded company, now the SEC is going to come in and they're going to start asking about your carbon. And so what does that mean? It means that when you're the publicly traded company, you have to report not only your carbon that you create, but all the carbon in your supply chain. Ooh. And we as an operator are part of the supply chain. You as a vendor are part of that supply chain. So everybody's going to have to do it, whether the SEC mandates it or not. So that's going to be a huge shift in the industry. And a big part of where your carbon comes from is your energy consumption. Another big part is your construction processes. So I think we're going to see very dramatic shifts, disruptive shifts in those two spaces.
From like the means and methods, you know, like what we're using, like FRP in place of steel, or
you know, what
like
kind,
natural gas versus diesel engines,
even how much on-site work versus off-site work you do.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing that already, don't you?
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, is the intent, and forgive me if I'm. Is it? Are you going to be U.S.? Will you guys go down to Mexico? Will you go to London? And you know, I mean, global.
North America is the focus right now.
Okay.
You know, you gotta pick somewhere and get good at it, I think. But there's
a lot of low-hanging fruit here in the United States that you could go do and be focused here for a while and still do.
And you know, I think certainly what we're doing on the energy side, I think that's replicable in other markets. And certainly, you know, you go to a place like Europe where the renewable, and you've got Green Data Center Coalition and the European Data Center Coalition as well. And like those markets are more, they're a little bit ahead of us in terms of cleaning up their electrons. So some of this would be easier in places like that, but you're not going to necessarily get the scale that we can do here. So
interesting. Well, what else do you want people to know about ClearArc? CleanArc?
CleanArc.
Sorry. So sorry. I just said that and I was like, whoopsie. I did have a drink, in my defense. What else do you want them to know?
That, you know, gosh, that's a good question.
Like, is there a density? Now you have this, like, you'll be able to go and they could get to whatever watts per square foot, or, you know, kW per rack, or is there anything that else? I mean, everybody has, like, someone asked me once, like, what's your advantage? I'm like, well, I think versatility and agility, you know, where when you run a paramilitary type culture, you have the mindset to be able to pivot on a dime, right? And that is an advantage. It could be a disadvantage sometimes too, because you don't slow down to pressure test things. And honestly, we want to be balanced on both sides of that coin. So, you know, we're actually not slowing down, but we're taking the time this quarter to just fix the blind spots, right? Because when you move so fast, sometimes
it is, you
don't have a chance to fix, right? So there's things that happen in this space that are internally driven, like the need to fix your blind spots, and then sometimes it's externally driven, right? And that could be barriers to growth in that space. In your case, I'm guessing, I mean, regulation's a factor, right?
It can be. It certainly depends.
Future regulations,
right? Yeah. So, we're trying to think like our customers. We're trying to organize our processes like our customers are used to their processes being organized in terms of how projects are sourced and delivered to them. It's going to look to them and feel to them a lot like what they would be doing. We can just do it for them faster.
Different logo on the building.
I think one of the challenges that everyone's having to rise to meet, this was another question that came up yesterday, is, well, how do you future-proof? Are you going to design your data centers for liquid cooling? I've heard that question twice now at DICE panels. And I think a lot of us right now are, well, if the customer asks us for it, absolutely, we're going to put it in and charge them for it. But does it really make sense to just adopt that technology right now for everyone across the board? They're asking a spec build,
Are you going to spec build this? And you're like, why would I?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'll build a core and shell, and then you let us know what the mechanical implementation is.
You obviously don't want to build a building that's obsolete. And with supply chain constraints right now, we're 2 years out for a lot of major components.
You have to be ordering all that stuff now.
So you've got to think 2 years ahead and then 2 years ahead of that. And how is my air-conditioned box going to respond to what technology is going to be there in 4, 5, 6 years, not just 2 years?
Yeah, but you can't over-rotate on that. I mean, you're not going to be able to future-proof everything, right? So
you're not.
I also think about this, like, even you were talking about how the means and methods that we're going to see in the way that we deliver our product, you know, from, you know, substituting one material for the next, or, you know, having a shift in the way that people design things, where they're moving, I don't know, they're removing generators from their entire lineup arbitrarily. I'm just saying there's going to be changes, and you're going to see regulation too, but I also think, I think some of those things already exist, and I've been listening for the last 10, 15 years. I mean, if you went to a trade show 10 years ago here, it'd be like, remember when you watched Back to the Future and it was like 2022 and he's running around on like a skateboard with no wheels and everything's hovering and stuff. And you're like, that's what it's going to be like. Yeah. It's not. I mean, I think that we've not hit a tipping point, right? No. So as Malcolm, he has that law of diffusion innovation, and he's like, look, there's this many people that are just so innovative that they're like, why aren't we all doing this? And then you have, these early adopters, and then you go all the way down the curve, and you have to have like an adoption of like 15 to 20% or 15 to 18% of the market before you have that chasm. And I don't know if we're there yet, even on modular data centers, right? And there's a lot of groups that are smart and they got ahead of it and they've partnered well with groups that give them headline privileges to their modular components, and they build most of the things offsite in a static environment where the quality's better. Right. Ship it, and now the coordination of trades is less cluttered. It's less pressure. You're taking risk, and it does pencil fairly well. I mean, but I expected it like 10 years ago going to trade shows. I'm like, oh my God, we're only going to be building these things. It's going to be like
Legos.
We're just stacking them like Legos.
Yeah.
We're not there yet. No. And I think that some of my message is we will one day most likely have to be, because all the emerging technology that's coming, I feel like we're about ready to hit another one of those hockey.
I think it could be.
I think that
very soon.
I think that we, the consumers, are the ones that drive that. And I mean, it's so awesome talking to people. Like I was on the phone with, I'm not on the phone. I did a podcast. I did the QTS experience with Dave McCall. Awesome guy. If you haven't done that. Oh, well, I don't know if you can because you're a competitor, but I did. And he and I we challenged each other on where I felt like the greatest existential threat to our space is obviously labor. And he's like, no, it's power. And he could be right. I mean, we would both be right. But I do think that there's groups that are trying to get ahead of that, and they're monetizing ways to solve for it. Right. Don't you agree?
I do agree.
So what do you see coming next? How long will we be until these things that people are espousing now are going to be full mainstream adoption? And what do you see being the greatest advantage that your company's going to have based on the path that you're investing heavy into right now? What do you think?
That's a great question.
You want me to edit those out?
I think
there's no wrong answer.
Yeah. No, I think the biggest shifts in technologies are either going to come around customers getting comfortable enough with something that, and again, it's something that came up yesterday. I hadn't really thought about it until, that piece kind of clicked together. But do you need 5 nines for all your applications?
Well, to that point, think about this. If it's on-prem and it's their own, because I've talked to enterprise end users that are like, they're losing confidence and faith in a lot of the operators because no one can make dates, right? And it's not their fault. I mean, like, listen, the whole supply chain is strapped. So like people are like, well, I'm like, why? So you think you're going to be better off going and doing that yourself versus these people that just do it for a living and that's their only product that they use? I'm like, let me say this. If you think that you have the purchasing power to make that problem go away more than one of these operators, that's the only thing that they're doing. It's like, good luck. Yeah. But you're not going to be able to demand.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to demand that. Certainly not as, that's why they pay us money, is to be as resilient for them as possible. Right. But, there are other ways to solve for that. There are other ways to get that reliability. Some of that rests on them, on the customers. And, going back to what I said about, if they're diversifying their loads, can they move things around? Is that a solution to accepting maybe less?
So I think that you just touched on the thing that I believe will be required by the enterprise end user to arrive at that tipping point. Yeah. And it's a simple word. It's one word, and it's collaboration. They're so used to holding their cards so close to the vest, that they're hurting themselves. These enterprise end users that want so much have realized that there's a diminishing return on how much pressure you could put on these operators, because they have financial investors that are like, sorry, they're not investing into this with all that uncertainty. Right. And it's forcing these enterprise end users to be not more open kimono, but they definitely have to collaborate and engage more.
It's a little bit more of a partnership approach instead of a service provider approach. And I mean, if I could tell you the number of times that I would just go to, former sales teams and be like, if they could just tell me where they want to be, just tell me where they want to be in a year and I will go get it, but I can't do it on 3 months' notice.
I think that that's the big change. That social dynamic is what's going to have to change to see the acceleration start begin to take place, or the adoption rate of certain things to start to take place. Is although we're building data centers, we're really just building relationships with other groups, and those things are going to be at some point at the end of the day. If you get high enough in the food stack, people are making decisions that could KO their entire career,
Right.
or where they're at, right? And those are harder decisions to make when you're sitting on.
Right.
Okay. So my thing is how do you solve for that as an operator these days, or can you?
I don't know if you can fully solve for it. I think you have to be willing to take, some calculated risks.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
State Smoker,
like I said,
West.
things we're focusing on. We're focusing on large scale campuses. We're focusing on large scale customers, and offering them a product that's an energy product in addition to a data center product. So that's a fairly small range of motion compared to some other players that are like, yep, we offer you everything from edge to the biggest campus you've ever seen.
Yeah.
But I think we can also execute on that really, really well. We will become experts in that space.
Sure.
Because that's our focus.
Plus, whatever ecosystem you whip up together, I mean, no matter how smart you are, if they're moving in together, like when I would do programs, there were plenty of times I picked teams because they gave the end user that was coming in the greatest level of confidence.
Exactly.
Right? And I was like, that moves the needle.
It does.
If they want that commission agent, we're going to use them.
Yeah.
Right?
And the openness to having those different partnerships and those different arrangements, I think is, companies that adopt that, I think will, again, be real winners in
But it has to be upstream and downstream.
It does.
That means you
absolutely
have to make sure that you have to give some transparency as well to these people, because it's your vision, your or Jim's, or I'm sure you're collaborating, but someone's got to bring that vision alive. And Jim's not turning wrenches last time I saw, right? So you gotta get these other groups to do it. And right now the pent up growth for labor is so high that you could be in some markets and they're like, I remember going to Virginia and I had to go, I sat down with like 6 electrical contractors just to try to convince them why they should bid on my work.
Wow.
Because why would they? They had, I mean, that's the headquarters of the largest enterprise end user in the United States, which is the federal government. And there's a ton of work with them. Plus, it's all these other operators. Like I almost in some cases the tail wag the dog, because whoever won the labor force or the supply chain was going to most likely be capable of winning that deal because they had the ability to deliver the product.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, all right, well, cool. I want to shift gears off of that. Can I?
Yeah.
Coach me on how I can have a greater impact and getting more of these women to want to come on these podcasts or even on the DCAC stage. Like, sadly, I have been like, Lindsey, I can't find any more women. Will you do it again? And you're like, sure. But I'm like, come on, man. What am I doing wrong?
I don't think you're doing anything wrong. I think.
Can you speak into the microphone when you say that, please? I'm joking. How do we get them more involved?
I mean, the number one thing I hear when I tell people I'm speaking, it was the same thing that they said to you. It's like, oh, I could never do that. How do you get up there on stage and just talk about stuff? And I'm like, I just do it.
Love what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean,
love what you do.
You've heard me speak. There are topics I'm very passionate about. I could talk for 3 hours, and you use
a lot of big words because you went to Duke.
I do, yes, multiple syllables. But I think a lot of it is just getting over that. There's that sense of fear of what if I get up there and say something stupid. I get up there and I say something stupid every single time. I'm sure.
Take a number.
Yeah. And I think it's more just maybe if people had a forum to learn more about this, like how do you be a public speaker? How do you get comfortable being on a panel? How do you approach being on a panel? How do you get the buy-in from your executive team? How do you feel comfortable that if you're, I'm just a junior, construction manager, like how do I know what I'm good at talking about? Well, you just kind of find a place to start. Maybe that's internal to your company,
Are you or Carrie or Jackie going to be coaching up people at this summit to do that?
I don't know. I haven't talked to them about it yet, but I mentioned it to another friend of mine who's in WIMCO, and she was like, that's a great idea. she's like, that would be something. She's like, I'd love to do a lunch, session or something on that. So
yeah, well, let me know how I can help, right? Like use DCAC, either platform, right?
Yeah.
So let me know how I can help because again, it doesn't take, it's going to take time, right? It's going to take time to get it to where I think we all want the same thing. Believe it or not, we do. Like I wish that there was more of, I wish that there were just more of them that engage with us in the same, I don't want to say with friction, but like, you don't see dudes hitting the brakes on each other. They'll just collide into each other with their own thoughts and ideas. And I want to have those design charrettes, those brainstorming idea sessions. Those are just so valuable to pressure testing people's philosophy on industry.
Yeah.
And I want more of that, right? I want more of that with us.
Yeah.
Right? I get to do that with you. Obviously, if I'm around, I'll ask you any stupid question and you'll laugh and then you'll tell me.
But yeah, I mean, this kind of dialogue, like we're just chatting here.
Needs to be more of that. How do I help create a platform that you can lead or carry or anybody else? Because there are people on my team that need that. Like I have amazing people on my team and we have a fair amount of females and I feel like no matter how great I can be, I can never be as great as if they had someone else that they.
Well, and that's the representation thing. The more women you see, the more people of color you see. When you recognize yourself on that stage or in that keynote or on that panel or wherever it is on that podcast, it becomes possible. And that's, so it's something that should hopefully build on itself. But I think, I don't often know about speaking opportunities. A lot of them have now sought me out as opposed to me seeking them out.
We need not a Tony Robbins, we need like a Tina Robbins. Can you be Tina Robbins? Just change your name for a quarter or two. We need someone to help inspire others. Like what inspired you to go be on stage and not be scared? Did someone give you a pep talk?
I don't know. Honestly, I've always been a little scared every time I've got up. So
like how scared?
Scared enough that my hands were shaking. They're not.
For real?
Now. They're not now. Yeah. So the very first time I was ever on a panel, it was back when I was a lawyer, my first year in house, and I spoke at the Association of Corporate Counsel annual meeting that happened to be in Denver that year. And so I got up there and spoke on a panel about why is my real estate lease not a ground lease or something along those lines. And I felt so out of my element.
Were you like Ricky Bobby, had your hands up here, and you're like, what do I do with these?
I was like, where do I put my hands? Oh my gosh, this chair is really high and I'm wearing a skirt. What do I do here? How do I not strangle the microphone?
So you have to use that. You have to talk about those
and
things.
That's the kind of stuff that it's not something that's just innate to a lot of people. But once you get comfortable with it, then it becomes more enjoyable. I mean, I like it now.
You should talk more about that to others that that have, like we did DCAC because there was enough platforms that had the same people talking at them all the time, and I felt like I was stumbling into people that were just incredible at these conferences, and I was not that I'm anybody now, but I was even a bigger nobody then, and like I could sit around and listen to people talk, and I'm like, man, that's a great thing. How come you're not talking about this? Right. And I can't get up there because it seemed like there was a barrier, right? So one of the reasons why we created the podcast or the conference was to make it easier for companies to be able to afford to sponsor and participate in a much more meaningful way at conferences, and to give a platform to where like there was a time where there were plenty of people that would reach out and be like, hey, I'm happy to talk on your thing, even on the podcast stuff, and I have to tiptoe around not saying thanks but no thanks, right? Because they're everywhere else, they're omnipresent everywhere else, and I'm like, I want to hear from other people that don't have a voice,
right?
And I'm trying to always find people, and when I find people that are like, they're just bold, you know what I'm talking about? They have a chip on their shoulder typically, and they have something to prove, and I'm like, hey, can I poke you on a like stage or something? I want to pull the string and see what comes out.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And this platform lets you do that. So I mean, look, feel free to use this platform if you want to come hijack and be the guest podcast
Oh my
host
gosh.
and bring some people here.
Getting me out of my comfort zone, Kirk.
That's what I'm all about, right? Well, we have to. We can't just I mean, it's a pretty homogenous method, and people, let's be honest, 90% of our industry is kind of me too. Like, hey man, we do that too, and I'm like, that's great. We have to have those people too. But there's certain people that are going to bust out, and they're going to be like, hey, why aren't we just going this path? Let's just create a new path, and I want to be able to be part of that crowd, right? Okay. I want to be able to say, hey, listen, why are you holding the white woman back, to you, right? Instead of me. I'm joking, but like we need to open those platforms, and I'm willing to do whatever I got to block and tackle. I just don't know what to do.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic to hear, and I don't have a complete set of answers. I just know we got to start somewhere, and showing people that it's not scary. You break anything, you take anything big. Like I'll use our ESG framework. Looking at that, oh my gosh, that's intimidating. That's a lot of things to put together, but then you break it down into manageable pieces. Here's how you approach being on a panel. Here's how you approach being a moderator. Here's how you approach being a keynote speaker, which is fantastic when you get that opportunity. Here's how you talk on a podcast. Here are the questions to ask about what's the seating arrangement? What kind of mic am I going to have? Should I wear a skirt or not? I mean,
we never had that conversation.
Your body, but your body language. I was talking to somebody else about this, and she asked for feedback after her first panel. She's like, no, really, how did I do? And people are like, oh, you did great. You did great. She's like, no, really, tell me how did I do? And they're like, oh, well, watch your body language, next time because you're, you kind of lean forward a little bit and that makes you, look smaller, like sit back, relax. And that's honestly why I wear jeans a lot on panels, because it lets me be more relaxed. I don't have to worry about crossing my ankles or anything like that. I don't have to worry about whether the stage is higher or not.
Same with me. Yeah. Absolute same. That's why.
I mean, you wear a skirt just about as well as I do. So
I want to talk about it. This is not my lifestyle. This is just my whole purpose, right? Yeah. So I love what I do. I love data centers. I love the industry. I mean, I think that I came from a really cool community in the military that allowed me to have a successful career here. And then this industry is very unique where I don't have to be a lawyer.
Right.
I just have to outwork everybody I could see. That's it. It's simple, right? I'm like, I don't have to be smarter than you. I'm definitely not smarter than you, but I just have to be able to work hard, and if you grind in this space, it tends to really reward those that want to put out the work, right? So what's your advice to anybody that's listening right now? Like when I say, what's your passion? I'm like, I know that this is kind of something that you really enjoy doing.
Yeah. So let me go back to, we were talking at the very beginning about, I grew up in the small town and then I left. And I definitely don't see myself moving back there. But the older that I've gotten, the more I appreciate where I grew up and how I grew up. And, even though I've done more farm chores as an adult than I ever did growing up, that background of hard work and putting all of your dedication into your passion. For my dad, it's our farm, it's our land. The lessons that I learned in presence and showmanship and, again, the work you put in is the work you get out when I was in 4-H and, having leadership roles in that organization. I find myself drawing more and more on those things. And it's become incredibly important to make sure that even though we live in the city now, that my daughter has some of those same foundations, and understanding one, where her food comes from, but also that this kind of hard work is this kind of input is what gets you places. It's not about your connections. It's not necessarily about your network, although it is, but you don't have to go to a Duke to get, to these spots in a career that you love. You don't have to have that. You do, however, have to work your ass off.
That's it.
Yeah.
I like that. So let me ask you a couple other questions then. Like, what do you tell people you do?
That I'm chief cat herder.
Yeah. But for what? Which industry?
I mean, if somebody asked me at a cocktail party and they're like, "Oh, you're a chief operating officer," what does that mean? It means I'm a problem solver.
But when you tell people you are a COO of a data center operator, what do people say?
They're like, "Oh, what's a data center?"
And what do you say?
It's the air-conditioned box where the internet lives.
That's what you call it, the air-conditioned box where the internet lives.
Yeah.
All right,
I've found that is what makes sense to people.
All right. So. I like that. That's got to be in the top 5. Yeah. I like it. I mean, I don't want you to get cocky, but I like that one a lot. All right. What about, oh man, there was a question I was just going to ask you. Like, I'm doing this thing. Right? I'm all about doing and trying things, even if they fail. I love failing forward, right? So I'm doing this thing. It's going to be released in a little bit. We've already introduced it to a few groups that have signed in, but it's called it's in my world, my focus is on the data center industry and my community.
Right.
And I see your passion towards helping grow and develop. I mean, you're going to try to help be one of these contributing pathfinders to open up and blazing a trail for more women like yourself to fall defined and discover careers of meaningful significance in this space. What I did was I started a data center coalition, and that was really more designed around, I'm harvesting a lot of candidates coming from military bases, junior military officers that went to Duke or the academies to, non-commissioned officers like myself that just weren't mature enough maybe for college or didn't have the right circumstances in life. And it doesn't matter because they went into the military, they came away, and they have, the military does a great job of exposing us and training us on advanced weapons and machinery and technology, learning how to operate well within the civilian fleet. It just takes an acclimation period.
Yeah.
And for me, I didn't even know about this industry. I mean, how many people do you run into today? And you're like, I'm in data centers. Like, what is that?
Just about every one of them.
Which I'm trying to solve, and I'm working on it, which is why I always ask people, what do you tell people you do? Because we keep that lesson, like, this is what I do.
Yeah. My
thing is, the Data Center Coalition was really designed around, I have, let's say I go to a military base, Fort Hood, and there are 100 military active duty that are going to be getting out of the military in the next 6 months.
Right.
And right now they're looking at options that include, I'm going to go back to where I came from, Pigs Knuckle, Illinois, or I'm going to go back, or my cousin works at this place, or Orion, or some recruiter found me, and they just never heard of this. They know of the traditional verticals, finance, high tech, manufacturing, retail, automotive, whatever, and they just don't know about this one.
Yeah.
Which is unbelievable to me because it is the engine under the hood for every other vertical of industry.
Right.
Like, automotive industry is all high performance computing environments within a vehicle now, and they cannot run without IT support through what we do, right? But whatever, finance, name it, energy,
healthcare, everything runs on a digital platform.
Back to a data center. And I look at that and I'm like, hey man, you could go work for them, or you could go work for the industry that supports every other industry on earth.
Yeah.
And they just don't know about it, right? So I don't want to have to catch these people within like 1 month of them getting out of active duty. So I'm creating a coalition that is for every data center expert. I mean, look, I hate to tell you this, but I'm going to ask you to do one too, but it means I'm going to assign an ambassador.
Okay.
A data center coalition will have an industry ambassador that will be at any time assigned maybe up to 5 candidates.
Okay.
And it means like every other month once a month, maybe you host a 1-hour Zoom call where 5 to 10 people from around the country that are active duty. They could be coming out of the military in 5 months from now, 4 months from now. And they get to view the world of our industry through your optics and not mine or my team's, right? And think of it as almost community service for us. We have to, do the heavy lifting. So I'm like, how great would it be if I were able to find arbitrarily 100 people, maybe 200 people in this industry that have been in the industry long enough that they're willing to shoulder the burden of explaining this industry to 5 to 10 more people, and just maybe doing a Zoom call for an hour during lunch once a month and saying, hey, maybe it's a Q&A.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you the state of the industry. This is a JLL report or whatever, and it says this is what's going on.
Yeah.
What are your questions? What do you want to know about this space? And someone that could educate these people.
It's a great idea.
But I think that you need to do that on the female side too.
Okay.
There's a lot of women that don't realize that they could be COOs of data center operators, emerging groups that are probably based on the team and the talent that you're putting together. I would imagine you're going to be a major contributor. So how do we tether those that I'm not saying you've arrived. I mean, you're still growing.
I'm still growing. I got a lot to still do.
Take a number, right? But what I'm saying is you know the space well enough. Try to be the person that you never had, right? So you got here, you did have people that contributed to things, but did anybody ever just be like, hey, what would have happened to your career if you had someone like you that said, hey, listen, Lindsey, once a month, I'm going to open up this call and ask me any question about this industry you want. Because you were working at a renewable energy, for 8 years, and you're like, hey, man, I'm learning more about this space.
Yeah.
But what if they did that? What if they put together a collective that allowed people to kind of be exposed to the industry and understand the industry so that they don't just go, I'm going to go work in healthcare or energy or no, this sounds like this is the best place to start from. So how do we get a higher adoption rate into this space from females, from veterans to diversity and inclusion candidates and minorities? That's what I'm trying to do. So I'm doing the Data Center Coalition to help to expose the industry to veterans from everywhere so they realize they're not limited to just these industries that are traditional. There's this whole other thing that's just crushing it. We're thriving and striving. How do you do that for your community? Because I know on the side, I mean, you're running and gunning and you run at another altitude and airspeed, but there's also this thing that you want to help support. I know it's important to you.
It is important to me.
So how do you do that and how do we help?
Wow. That's a great question. And that's a great idea.
Take it to WIMCO, talk about it, shoot around.
See, you are smarter than me because you thought of that and I didn't.
Public school. I went to public school. Not even close. I'll say this. There's got to be, I wish there are some amazing women in the space. Sometimes they're just not confident enough to come speak at these things. And they don't realize how many beatings I take for it. But that's not why I want them here. I want them here because who's going to open up the trail in 10 years from now? So that when my daughter graduates from college or whatever, she's like, hey, you know what, Dad, I want to get in this industry too. I grew up listening to you talk about these things.
Yeah.
I could be like, you see that lady? This is her career path. And that's how she did it. And she's the CEO of X now, right? And I'd like to see more of that.
Yeah. It would be really great. It would be really great to showcase that. It would be really great to have that opportunity. And maybe it's not lack of confidence. Maybe it's
lack of skills.
Lack of skills. They don't know how to. I don't even know how to publicly speak clearly, but talk. Maybe it's someone who doesn't feel that they're supported in doing that at their company, and maybe they need a framework to pitch it. I mean, I think there could be a lot of reasons that.
Well, train to that.
Yeah.
Just ask.
Yeah, just ask.
Because I can't imagine right now that any company that has a strong female on their team that says, hey, I'd like to go speak about this at this stage, I'd be like, no, thanks.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah, it seems inconceivable that would be the response. But
I think that's why I like this industry too. It's a little bit more progressive in the sense where they will. Like I was fortunate to be born and raised on a military base. And what that means is I don't think people in the military really care what the religion is of the person in the foxhole standing next to them, nor do they really care about their race sometimes or their sexuality. And I think there was no limit to watching what women were capable of doing too growing up on a base. So I was pretty foreign to some of those things because no one, I guess I'm oblivious because I am the absolute worst that you can be. I'm a white Christian male type of thing, but I'll say this. I just never saw it. It wasn't prevalent because people are dealing with mortality. So they're like, listen, man.
There's a bigger picture.
Yeah. You get it? My thing is there's always if there is those barriers that exist, I don't see it. But I have to imagine if it was exposed, it would be destroyed quickly, right? Because no one has time for that shit anymore, right? Yeah. People want to everybody's got real problems to deal with, those optical ones. I wish that those are the only challenges I had, but I have real ones that I have to go work on, like driving down costs on X or,
Right.
You get what I'm saying? Like making things more efficient, training more people. What are the biggest challenges that you have or you see yourself facing as you're a chief cat herder or the big problem solver?
I think they're the same ones that everyone's facing. Can we get land? Can we get power? Can we get them in the time that we need to get them? Can we get the customer engagement? I think all of those are overcomable.
Is there a specific order those fall in, by the way, too, or is it just? I mean, are those random, or is it like I got to get the customer engagement to be able to get the land?
It's really the other way around. It's getting the land. It's really getting the power, especially these days.
That's the longest pole in the tent.
It is the longest pole in the tent.
Interesting.
Almost
in every market.
Anywhere. Almost every market.
Are there any markets that you're seeing that are like, I don't know, like somewhere in Nebraska or like, hey, we will roll out the red carpet for you?
So I think a lot of those markets got tapped in this
Already.
past year. If there was available capacity, I think a lot of it got taken up because it was available, and so now
The Southeast is like that, right?
Southeast is like that. It's like, where's the next? Dallas had a huge leasing year. Hillsborough had a huge leasing year last year. So now, where's the next available power, and how quickly can you get there? And so whoever can capture that flag is going to be very successful.
Are you seeing certain states that today aren't really recognized as data center states that are like, hey, we want to get in the game?
That's a great question.
Well, we're seeing so much stuff in Atlanta and Ohio and Minnesota and obviously Phoenix and stuff like that. But I mean, Phoenix has been a strong market for years, but are there markets that are emerging like Salt Lake City, right? Are you seeing other like states do incentives or municipalities that are like, hey, we'll do some abatements for X, Y, and Z?
I mean,
groups that really want you there.
Groups that really want us there. So I don't think we've had a lot of those conversations. We've had some. When you talk about bringing in a 400-acre campus, you know how much these things cost to build. Think about that economic activity in your small county, and what you can do with that. With that tax revenue, how that's going to be able to change your communities for the better. That some people are very open to that, but then you get a lot of things, a lot of places where people are like, "Yeah, I don't want that in my backyard."
Is that what it is?
Which they say from their Facebook page.
Oh, but is that? But is that what it is? It's the neighbors saying no thanks, or is it the operators going, "I don't want to go to Kansas to see my data center"? I'm arbitrary state, by the way, but I mean, is it?
No, I think it's.
Are they willing to change operators? Not operators, but end users?
I mean, as an operator, we're going to go where we think or where we know our customers are going to be. And that could be, Minot.
Oh my God.
It could, think about how
cooling in the winter.
Exactly. Think about how cheap our cooling would be.
Yeah.
So it's not really from that perspective. A lot of it comes down to educating the communities on, we're a giant air conditioned box. We're maybe several giant air conditioned boxes. But here's what we actually do. Here's what we do for the world that you live in. Here's what we can do for your community. Tax incentives are great. Not having local opposition to your project is also great.
Oh, I got you.
I mean, like I said, it's incredibly exciting. We've got such a great team put together. I love working with all of those guys. And I'm really excited about what we're going to do with this company. So,
I'm really excited to watch it grow too. I think a lot of people are leaning in. That's the one thing about this space is I don't think people are really rooting against each other, right? I think they just like competing against each other.
Yes.
And you're really careful in this industry on the toes you step on anyway, right?
Absolutely.
So,
because it's a small world.
Yeah, and if you don't it won't take long until that person is working for an enterprise end user or something else. So I've always found that to be one of the greatest things about this space is it doesn't take much to shift sides of the ball. But what is some of the greatest things that you've learned about yourself or you've taken away from your opportunity to be in this industry?
I'm going to give this a little bit of thought.
All right.
I'm going to go back to that mountaintop in Africa.
When you wanted to quit or when you finished it?
When I wanted to quit, and you talk about failing forward, there was that moment where I was like, okay, I am okay with not continuing to go up that mountain. And I was going to fail, and I was okay with that failing. And that possibly made it easier to continue because I'd already accepted that it was okay if I didn't
Because you'd rather fail forward than quit.
Yeah. And I know that. So now I know that I'm going to screw up. There will be mistakes. There'll be things
Sure.
like, this could have been done differently. Like, let's do it differently next time. But all of that's a learning experience, and all of that's a growth experience. Every single piece of this is a growth experience, and that's
I don't know if it's at your level. I think it's not. I mean, it is, but I think that's where it begins. That's not where it ends.
No,
you're a leader, which means that I don't really believe that the women that don't come on my conference or come on my stage or come on this podcast are really battling confidence issues. I wouldn't have asked them if I didn't think that they were powerhouses.
Yeah,
I honestly don't even think it's the skills. I think that they, like all dudes and everybody else on earth, it's in our human nature to be afraid of failing. And I think that if I could, you're going to give people skills. You'll teach them people are going to listen to your podcast and be like, oh, I could do that, right? I think that they'll learn skills and they'll learn confidence. They have it.
Yeah.
I think that what we have to focus on is getting people to be more comfortable failing. Does that make sense?
It does.
Get on the stage or get on this. Start with podcasts because podcasts are better. I could edit out any part you want. No one will know the stupid things you say. Trust me, these guys.
That's beautiful.
I record an 8-hour podcast to get 45 minutes of content that's worthy of listening to. I just think that that's where that is. I think it's I think it's up the stack. So I spend a lot of my time trying to peel back the layers of all the onions in life, and I just think that people are afraid of failing. You obviously aren't. Which is what
I am terrified of failing every single day.
Not enough to not fail forward though, because look where you're at now, right? So, you are a failure. No, I'm joking. I just think that you have to be able to be bold enough to be listen, it's in our human nature to give everyone second chances anyways. I think people want grace. We give grace to others when they fail. So you just got to go fail forward, right? I feel like I don't get the opportunity to talk to people like you enough to tell me how I can help others because in addition to a podcast and a conference, I have another business too that is the primary focus of everything we do. And I have a stable of some of the most amazing women you'll ever meet. Yeah. And I wish I could coach and guide them or inspire them in certain ways, but I'm going to have limitations. So I'm always constantly I found one lady who you'll meet. I'm sending her to the WIMCO event and she's she was on this podcast with my team and I just met her recently. Yeah. Just a powerhouse of a lady. And I'm like, I don't know what it is about you, but that stuff, when you're around that energy, it's infectious. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
So I'm like, I need you to be around my team a little bit more because I need them to have that. I need them to have someone that inspires them. Yeah.
I'll throw a question back at you. Have you asked them? Have you asked your team what they need?
So it's funny you say that because I am a caveman. So it's a fair question. For the first time ever, we're doing that. And it's not because I don't care. It's because we were moving so fast. If you're flying so fast, you're just.
Stop. Yeah.
But that was a blind spot. And finally, we started with doing 360s on my leadership team fourth quarter last year, which is awesome, humbling.
Very. Yeah.
There's a few fetal position nights I found myself in. But at the end of the day, it's all of the growth that I've ever had in my entire life has traditionally come from, I'm not going to say trauma, but friction. Okay. Sorry, but growth comes from pain, and reading 360s about the things that you miss, although you agree with it, it's the indignation that you have as an individual. Where you're like, what are you talking about? I do all these things.
Go through the 5 stages before you're like, okay, that was constructive.
Yeah, you're like, you know what, man, it's so true. And thank God they had the courage to tell me, right? So thank God. And then once that happened, I discovered hey, we need to be doing this more frequently. And then finally I'm like, oh, by the way, when are we doing this to all hands? The whole company needs to have this. And I'm embarrassed, but I'm also relieved to know that what do I know, man? I'm just a dopey sailor that got into the space, and here I am doing this. And I'm like, okay, so now we have to go ask everybody in the company how they're doing. And we are just now implementing and instituting that. And it's been very tangential. I'd be like, hey, if you're in my orbit and you want to talk to this person, I had no problem brokering those introductions, but we've scaled. We're bigger now. Yeah. And I have to account. There's people on my team that I've never had that before, but I've never met, Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
I know about them. I track them.
Right. But you don't have that like day to day like you did
when
the
I
beginning.
Had teams myself. Now like my primary client, my customer is my leadership team. That's it. And if I take care of them, then they take care of my entire team. And if they do that well enough, they take care of our clients, and that takes care of all the rest.
Yeah.
But you're going to mess up, especially 3 years into a business. You guys are just getting started. So there's so many amazing mistakes to make throughout the adventure. But you got to
put that. So many amazing mistakes to make.
Well, you don't learn anything from anything you do right. Yeah. You only learn from the things you do wrong. So you have to fail forward, and you have to reach the level you're at. You have to be okay failing. Mm-hmm. You have to be willing to be courageous enough to fail. Yeah. So, or dumb enough to get on a mountain and not trained to do Mount Kilimanjaro. That's an amazing story. So, but listen, I really appreciate you driving down and taking the time. I know you have a million things going on.
Absolute pleasure.
And I hope to be able to, I promise not to like lean on you too much to try to get you involved in all the things. Cause I don't have a stable of women that'll slap us around and tell us what's up too, but we need that, so I appreciate you being a friend of industry and for, letting your love light shine on these stages and everything. It's awesome. And it's been great to see you grow. And I'm really excited to hear what you guys are going to do.
Thank you.
Let me know how I can help in any way.
Okay.
All right.
We'll keep this conversation going.
You got it. Well, listen, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
All right.